People of the internet, I'm Mike. This is Gettin Worked. If you're listening and hearing what I'm saying right now, or you might be watching through this YouTube device, through your phone or your computer or whatever, even the bathroom, whatever you're doing, however you're getting this, however you're seeing this or hearing this, I'm back. And one of the things I wanted to do is actually talk to somebody who was in the wrestling stratosphere. There's a lot of podcasts out there. There's a lot of YouTube shows out there. And we got to band together. We got to make sure, A, we're supporting each other. B, we're just marking out together. So I reached out to someone who I really stumbled across and then couldn't put down. This show is taking rising stars and matching them up with legends. This is a show for the wrestling fan in all of us. I wanted to bring him on today to talk about not only interviewing wrestlers, but starting a YouTube show, his love of wrestling, and just marking out in general, like I said. On this episode of Gettin Worked, is the host of Rewind Recap Relive, Jonah. What is up, man? How are you?
What's up, Mike? Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. I love being on the other side of the coin for once, other side of the camera. So
Absolutely.
Thank you for that. And
Absolutely.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So you couldn't put us down, right? Is that true?
No. The show is so good, and it's one of those things where there's a lot of wrestling on the internet. I'm sure you know
Tons.
that. There's a ton of wrestling. Yeah. Podcasts, YouTube, journalists in wrestling, which, whatever. So there's, amongst all that, there's guys like you and me who are really just fans trying to express what we love about wrestling. One thing that attracted me to your show, where you're taking legends and rising stars, is you're approaching it from such a positive space. I don't get the vibe that you're shooting, that you're looking for the dirt. Now,
right, yeah.
When you approach wrestling with that kind of a mentality, I always think that comes from a deeper space. So where did your fandom of wrestling start?
I appreciate you first off saying that, because I would agree. Yeah, we're really not looking for the dirt. I would say it's really more, advice getting thrown around from that veteran to the rising star. So I'm really happy that you were able to pick up on that for sure. And I hope that we express that properly to the audience as well. And yeah, being a fan of wrestling for me started a long time ago. I'd say I was around 6 years old. I'd say 6 years old. And the first thing it was the Undertaker and Edge feud. So I think around 2007, I believe. You can maybe fact check. But yeah, 2007. And yeah, I was just flipping through the channels. I saw Undertaker, I saw Edge, and the Edge heads, and it was just incredible. It hooked me right away. And I always think that's such an amazing moment because I was literally just flipping through the channels. I think they might have been on Sci-Fi at the time, and I landed on it. I'd never seen it before, but I did actually. Coincidentally enough, when I say here from Times Square, it's not a work or anything. We're actually I've always grown up a block away from Times Square, and they used to have the WWF restaurant here. I don't know if you remember. Yeah,
Absolutely.
So, yeah, amazing place. I'm sad that I wasn't old enough to enjoy it, but
I
my
didn't appreciate
dad,
it.
Yeah. So my dad was in there one day and he saw Hulk Hogan and just. I think I was 2 years old, and it was Hulk Hogan, Vince McMahon, and they were selling Hulkamania shirts. And he was with his friends, and he's like, what's the worst that he could say? And he walked up to Hulk Hogan and was like, hey, can you sign this shirt for my son? Because he just knew at the time Hulk Hogan was huge, like an icon. So why wouldn't you, I guess banking on the fact that I would enjoy something signed by a celebrity when I was older. And yeah, and so I have that, framed downstairs. And when I did become a fan, I realized how cool that was. I remember naive me in middle school wearing the Hulk Hogan signed shirt with his signature right across there, looking
man.
But I came to my senses eventually. We got it framed, put it up. It looks nice in a little wrestling dungeon, like everyone I'm sure has. But yeah, so that's
a little bit more special though. The fact that it has a little bit of wear on it, like I rocked that. That was out in the world with the signature, with the Hulkster, running wild.
So no, I risked it all right there. I could have lost it, but I'm happy. Yeah, no. So that just worked out, and we have like the old Hard Rock WWF glasses and stuff. It's so cool. But but yeah, so that's where my really fandom of pro wrestling started, was around 2007, and from there it's been an incredible journey. I mean, I think we've probably all spent our fair share of time and money at autograph signings, right? And just been there, and at one point been like, man, this is crazy when you look back on all of it.
The
but
amount of
but
time and money spent on standing in
exactly.
line to get a signature from a dude who's not actually even that guy.
No. but yeah, so all throughout the years, all of that, all the signings, all the wrestling shows, I've been to my fair share of WrestleMania. It's incredible. It was my middle school graduation present with WrestleMania. So everyone around me, they always knew me as like that wrestling guy. You know, middle school, I had this phase. I went hair dyed, nails painted, armbands, the whole thing. Jeff Hardy, biggest Jeff Hardy fan. I remember my school wasn't exactly filled with wrestling fans, so everyone always thought the arms were just broken rather than wearing the white Jeff Hardy armbands. It was like, man, this kid breaks his arm a lot. But yeah, so that's where it started, and from there it just kind of picked up, and now I'm a media major in the city here in New York, and I wanted to couple my love for wrestling with that, and that's how the show really came about. I just had this urge, the more I was around a lot of creative people at my school, I was like, I got to create something, and I wanted to be with something that I love, which is wrestling, a huge passion for it. So I didn't know what that was, and I kind of just sat down for a while, once, especially with the pandemic, lots of time on my hands. So I sat down, I got to thinking. I watch a ton of the shoot interview. There's endless amounts, as you said earlier.
They're infinite.
Yeah. So I was like, how can I make mine just a little different? And, not that those are bad at all, the shoot ones, but I just wanted something that was a little bit different. And like you said, not really in a negative light, you know what I mean? Not really looking for those rumors or anything. More looking to actually maybe even help somebody who comes on the show, like a rising star. If they get that piece of advice, they run with it. But yeah, that kind of sums up where my fandom started, for sure.
Okay. So with focusing on going into visual media, because you said you came up, I'm assuming you went to school for media, for production, things like that.
Yeah, I'm entering my senior year now in the pandemic, and so yeah, I went for communication first, and then when I went to my 4-year school where I am now, I coupled that with media, communication, and culture. That's what I'm in right now. So.
Okay. So when you decided to go into making your own content, choosing YouTube over doing a podcast, over doing something only audio,
right?
Was that without a question, or was there a decision of, do I want to do visual? Do I want to do audio? How do I want to approach this?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So many years ago, I'm only 22, but many moons ago, I did have a show when I was like 9 or 10 years old, and it was like a YouTube show in the early stages of YouTube at that point, and it was just like recapping the weeks of wrestling. I think Bret Hart just had his incident, Nexus was attacking, something like that time period. And I did my show then, and it was obviously video. It was on you remember what a flip cam was? Do you remember those things? Yeah. It was like a white flip cam. I just don't see them around anymore. But so filmed that, liked it, ended it though. I didn't really, middle school came high school, now college. So I kind of put it to the side. But when I wanted to start this up again, I thought back to that and realized how much I enjoyed that. Like I talk with my hands a lot. I like making some type of facial expressions here and there. I think I come across from a self-critical standpoint, I come across better on a camera than just purely audio. And I know that I like to watch things as opposed to just listen to them. I know a lot of people love podcasts now, and they are really good if you're on the go. I love doing that on the go in my car. But when I'm sitting down and stuff and relaxing, I really like to watch something. I love to put it on the TV or whatever. So that's where that came across. And I also did want to get in because there's a lot of camera stuff that goes on at my college, like camera production, as you brought up. So I wanted to learn that a little bit. So I got myself, a camera. I got myself the lights, the whole setup. Green screen sounds cool to anybody, right? So I was like, all right, let me throw a green screen. And then I got the whole backdrop. If you saw my setup, it's like from somebody who really didn't know a lot about this before, I can say that I learned throughout it, which is definitely a beneficial part for me, learning that stuff heading into media in the future.
Getting into, you said you did a show previously.
Yeah.
Dealing with YouTube, because coming from the podcast side, I only hear the stories about YouTube, whether there's horror stories of dealing with them promoting the algorithm, working towards the algorithm. We had a
Right.
conversation about explicit content versus non-explicit content.
Yeah.
How much of a hassle or consideration is YouTube when you're crafting what your show is going to be?
Yeah. So I think when it comes to podcasts versus YouTube, if I had to pick like the one that just, and this is from no
Mhm.
experience really going into podcasts, so I'm kind of just talking from what I know my side, like YouTube. But I think when you want no barricades and just the quickest way to upload content, no roadblocks or anything, I think YouTube's the way to go because it's just so easy to create that account and put it up. Now, as you said though, there are limitations to that. Um, you can have, like, when you're promoting it, like I like to do a fair amount of advertising per episode. And I know YouTube, they came out with like Google ads in the last few years. I don't know when exactly, but they came out with Google ads, and I know that they don't like explicit content. So that's where it kind of fails, because there are a ton of YouTubers who have, you
Yeah.
know, curses and profanity, and then there's the others who don't, and both are equally as popular. But when you're smaller, I found that it's best to kind of keep it, PG, for lack of a
Right.
better term. Um, Definitely with that. I think there are advantages to both though. Definitely, like podcasting. I haven't really dove into that yet. Um, One thing I would say with podcasting that kind of halted me is I see when everyone uploads it, it's like wherever podcasts are available, wherever you get your podcast. I think there's just so many platforms, and I'm sure there is a tool. You can maybe tell me, is there a tool that just puts it on all of those?
There is a few of them. I'll be honest with you. I'm the guerrilla podcaster of podcasting. I taught myself
Gotcha.
everything.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So I upload to a couple things, but mostly, yeah, you got to keep track of a Spotify number, an Apple Podcast number, your own website number. I'm sure with keeping track of YouTube, you probably get a much more concise view of what's going
Yeah. Yeah. Early on, everyone still calls it a podcast. Like all my friends are like, how's the podcast coming? I'm like,
on.
good. But it just comes along with it like that. I think that's just going to be the new term.
Yeah.
Whether it's YouTube or that. But after I uploaded like my first 2 episodes, I was wondering, should I put an audio version out? And then I just thought I didn't want to really split my audience up because, like you said, I like that one view count kind of thing, see
Right.
how I'm doing right now. And then when I expand, I'm sure that I will. Podcast is clearly the way of the future. It seems like it, at least right now. But yeah, and then with the algorithm, since I was on YouTube then, like I said, it was like the early stages of both myself and YouTube. So I didn't really dive into it back then. Now I realize that, yeah, the algorithm it's like a definitely a thing that you don't want to, trifle with, right?
Right.
It's like, you got to really learn how it works. I watch countless videos, and then there's so much content, infinite, on, how to be good at YouTube, get more views, this and that. And after a while, like once I found what I wanted, once I knew what I wanted to know, when it came to YouTube, once I felt that I had what I needed to go forward, I kind of just went from there. I put the videos down for a little bit. I think I'd learned what I needed to for the time being. And then as time goes, I try to watch at least 3 videos on YouTube like every week just to stay up to date.
Yeah.
So I'd say that's where the downfall comes, because you need to rely on this other service rather than I know you put it up on your own website, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because that seems, whereas I can put it up, and when it comes to having an audio podcast, really, unless I disclose my numbers to people, my numbers are really
To yourself.
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you can get a rough idea on Spotify or a rough idea on Apple Podcasts based on likes, subscribes, things like that. But really, YouTube, your numbers are just right there. Like there's no hiding behind
Yeah.
anything. You can see
You
your
have to be,
subscribers, you can
yeah.
see your views on every single video. Do you ever have a conscious thought of that? Does that ever bother you? Is that ever in the back of your head? How
Yeah.
much do the numbers affect your day-to-day, just dealing with how you approach the podcast and how it affects your mental state?
Oh, my mental state. Yeah, that's that's something to talk about when it comes
Mental
to doing
state
this
might be
show.
a little bit too harsh,
Oh,
but
no, I totally get what you're saying. It's gotten to the point, when you have like a channel and you start something, it's really cool to watch it grow, when
right.
you've created this concept. but yeah, I think the mental state definitely goes hand in hand with like, you take your phone out and you're like, oh man, one new subscriber, refresh the page type of thing. So the numbers definitely, they matter in terms of subscribers. In terms of views, and I guess subscribers goes with that too. At first, when I was reaching out to these wrestlers, a fear was that I didn't want them to look it up and this is too small, even for whatever you're going to pay them, whatever the deal is. If they feel it's on too little of a platform, maybe they won't go for it. Or too little of an audience, I should say. But after the first, I'd say 5 or 6 episodes, I was like, all right, maybe that's not so much of a problem. I don't even think half of them watch it. I try to include a link within the email so they can look, but I don't think it's really been that much of an issue. I just work on getting it more up because I know it's very transparent. So I definitely work on improving. And when an episode does kind of dip as opposed to going up, I'm like, all right, so I'll watch this video a few times over and see maybe what it was that they didn't take. Obviously, some people are going to like, an episode with a certain talent versus another one, right? If someone's in current events, that one's probably going to rise. So it's a lot of things to couple in with it being transparent. I agree with that. Yeah, it's a great point to make.
Absolutely. So when you're coming up with the concept for the show, we're going to YouTube, roughly what you're going to do. Your show has a very distinct look. Your show has a very distinct feel. The same way you and I are different because of audio and visual standpoints. You and I are also very different because just like my logo, I'm a guy with a beard, snapback hat, and a t-shirt. You seem to have found a persona, would you say, with the suit, the tie, the background is very clean, whereas a lot of us in the wrestling kind of like stratosphere have a whatever kind of look. You seem very prepared. You seem very clean. How much thought went into that?
Definitely a fair amount. Like when I first, like I said, I knew that I wanted to create content for wrestling in some way. I didn't know what though, and that was what kept bugging me. So I kind of got into it and I was like, all right, Rewind. And I got some criticism because the name is kind of long, but I kind of just rolled with it. I was like, all right, I actually got told by Lanny Puffer that that's a poem in itself. And I was honored to hear that from the poet master himself. But anyway, so Rewind Recap Relive, I thought about it. I'm like, okay, what could this be? And so I was like, Rewind, obviously you got to go with that old kind of 80s. And that's where this came from, the whole get up with the bow tie and that kind of like I guess a Bobby Heenan or like a Gorilla Monsoon, the old type of commentator feel is what I'm trying to get out there. But then also when I upload the video, I put the people in like these little news boxes that you might see on whatever news you watch. Yeah. And the reason I did that is because I wanted to get like both sides of it, the relives, that's supposed to be very current, and I'm getting rising stars. So I tried to merge that clean look with like that 80s look as much as I could. And that's kind of what went into that. At first I thought it was crazy. Like got the suit, got all the equipment before I even really like knew the concept was going to be something I'd go forward with. Yeah. But yeah, it ended up working. I like the kind of like persona, like you said, that I carved out. I think it works.
It does. Absolutely. It gives the show
Thank you.
A distinct feel, and it gives you as a host a distinct look. The same way you look at Brian Zane from Wrestling with Regret, or all these other YouTube channels. When you have a familiar feel to it, it seems to bring people back constantly. So I definitely think you hit on that.
Thank you.
With that being the idea, Rewind, Recap, Relive, having a little bit of the 80s feel. You're doing Rising Stars with legends. How do you pitch that to a wrestler, a legend that you're trying to get? How do you start with hey, I want to put you on a show with a rising star, or do you start with, hey, I want to have you on my show? How much detail goes into explaining the concept of the show before you ask for the interview?
So that's a good question too. So when I first started sending out these emails, the header was invite to appear on a wrestling talk show, wrestling online show. That's what I put. And I thought that was like really broad, enough to kind of bring in anybody, any wrestler I reached out to, whatever time period. And so I said that, and in the email was, let me try to get this. It was long, which was the issue. I wasn't getting responses at first because it was like, it was a paragraph explaining the show. The first paragraph, I actually looked up like best ways to pitch to like when you're going up against, celebrities, whatever. And it was like, congratulate them on something. So the emails, like if I ever emailed like 3 wrestlers that are all in the same room coincidentally at the same time, they'd be like, who's this guy congratulating me on like my gym, like Bushwhacker Luke or whatever has his gym. I'm like, hey, congratulations on that gym you opened up 5 years ago. Want to be on the show or something. Anything I could really get them with that they'd be like, oh, cool, in a positive mindset. So that was the email. It was like, congratulations, loved seeing you do this. I'd love to have you on the show. Like blah 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 blah. And out of like, and as we said earlier, it's no secret like how do you get a wrestler on your show? You pay the money, right? So that just happens. You don't want to, as we said, go broke, but that's just how it works. So
their time is worth money.
Everyone's time, valuable. Yeah. So, and especially right now. So I would reach out to them, but I wouldn't actually I wouldn't mention it in the email. I wanted to like negotiate that, you know what I mean? And that was the mistake. They looked at this and they're like, nah, you know what I mean? If it doesn't say right up front. So then I changed the header to something a bit more enticing, which, mentioned the fee or whatever. And then to go back to your question though. So the concept was mentioned in the original emails and then I took it out because I just felt it made the email too long. And I was like, I just want you to be on this show. And then when we kind of got 3 or 4 emails going, and we, know that we have a communication, I didn't think that being on with a rising star or somebody a little bit more green than them would be a deal breaker once you've communicated enough. So the thought definitely went into it, a lot of trial and error. But I'm happy to say, like, after you fail enough times, like at that, like after, like I sent a bunch of emails, I got 1 response from like 15 emails. And when I changed it, I started getting almost too many, right? Then you're like, all right, so that I've figured it out.
Right. So when you figure out the formula and you start getting these emails out to people, I've had the same thing, but when you get the flat out no, when you just get the straight up like, who are you? What are you doing? I mean, did it take a minute when you got your first one? Did it shake you? Did it shake the show at all? Or was it just, what? That guy.
Yeah, I think it was more like, I definitely never took it personally because I think that's a big thing you can't do. Because as you said, their time's valuable. And if they don't think that the audience is there, if they don't think they're going to get their name out there and it's just like a little, minuscule amount, screw it. I get it, And I think I started reaching out before the pandemic got really bad. So they still probably had their fair amount of bookings. And then, of course, I had my few who came back, 3 weeks after I sent the email, who I assume that happened, that they were feeling the effect. So they'll take whatever. But it didn't shake my confidence. But what it did do was kind of have me go a different route, which was going towards promoters and bookers, because you kind of lose a sense of confidence, like at first, when you don't get, then you're like, oh, maybe I don't know what I'm doing. Maybe I go to somebody who's a little bit more experienced in this kind of area. So that's what I ended up doing. I went and I contacted a few different ones. And then, you reach out. Let's see. The first one I reached out to, they seemed like, well, the first guy actually was a singular guy. Great guy. Still talk to him. He recently, we lost connection, in terms of keeping in touch. I'm sure he'll circle back, as wrestling promoters always do. But he, nice guy. Let's see, who did he put me in touch with Lanny Poffo, which is an interview I just released. He's a really nice guy, up close and personal bookings. That was great experience. Then we moved to the second one. I reached out to another person, and this was like all in like the same day. I was just kind of getting a feel for the people. Yeah. So before I went on to cultivate a relation with that guy, I reached out to another person who was really seemed like a great guy. Put me in touch with the other guy who was the person who was in charge of getting his customers people. And we talked for 3 hours the first time, which I thought was a little weird, but I was like, hey, whatever. He's a conversationalist. After a while, I wasn't really doing much of the talking, but it was, right. Yeah. So I was like, okay. And then I think 4 more calls later, he was trying to put me up with this, he's trying to put me in up with some random TV station in the middle of nowhere. It was getting really weird. And, I think we had he was dangling Tony Atlas on the line. It was I could get this guy. That's how I imagine it. You know, it was like he and I here and Tony just in the middle. But
He
it
has
was
no idea he's a pawn in some Booker's game with some YouTube guy.
absolutely.
He's sitting at home. He's just reading a book. His phone rings. Like, hey, you want to do it? He's like, sure, why not? I don't know why that's my Tony Atlas voice.
Works.
But
it works.
yeah, gets the job done.
So yeah, and then I'm like, whatever. So that just got really weird. And then I saw, of course, then you're supposed to do this beforehand, you know, to anyone who's looking to start something up. Look at the Facebook reviews. I didn't. I kind of rushed into it. I looked at reviews. I'm like, all right, I'm staying away. So kind of broke things with that. Then I went to another person who I go to a store here in Queens that does a lot of wrestling signings. And I went to the guy who gets them their people because I'm like, all right, the guy who owns the store doesn't know these wrestlers personally. How does he go about it? So I figured, and a lot of these promoters, though, weren't really used to setting people up with like Zoom anything. Like, so that's kind of a weird thing to do. And that's where the concept comes into play. I pitched it to that guy and he was like, just don't bury the talent. And I was like, I never even thought of that. But like, I'd never try to do that. They're obviously the main guest on the show, like when it comes down to it. But anyway, so yeah, I talked to him. And interestingly enough, you're never going to believe this. He had no idea that I was just talking to the other people, nothing, like different states and everything. And he goes, hold on, Tony Atlas is calling me, speak of the devil. Because that's the first person I asked for. Because that was a little bit of a jab I was going to do the other guys. But anyway, I asked for Tony, and he was like, speak the devil, and he called him from the supermarket. I'm like, damn, this guy's following me, like indirectly, Tony Atlas on my tail. But maybe the other way around, whatever it is. But anyway, and then I didn't hear back. So after that, I just started doing myself, and thankfully I didn't hear back because, you know, the prices could just go, they could fluctuate so much. When you're doing it yourself, you handle, I'm sure you have, you know, a lot of experience when it comes to that. Like when you do it yourself and you take control, like really good things could happen. And like I said, I learned better, and I think I've developed skills from that, you know, that I can use moving forward. So.
Absolutely. And that's the thing too, is when you get into talking to these wrestlers and just really probably any celebrity in any walk of life, I would assume, whenever they get someone involved in us being in the Zoom tech generation of doing this, there's always going to be some kind of middleman. Somebody like we talked about, like Greg the Hammer Valentine probably doesn't know how to work Zoom. He's got to have somebody introduce him to it. That person's going to want to pay you. So at the end of the day, it's like, how much is going to Greg? How much is going to this other person? And from where we stand, we eventually have to draw the line, just as you did. Eventually, we can step around it. And myself, just like you have found out, you get much better results that way when you kind of grab your own art by the horns instead of waiting for someone else to do the middleman work for you. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And middlemen are a great service, and everyone's like, oh, cut out the middleman. It's great because it helps you out when you don't know anything. But when you've learned enough that, like, if you do it yourself, you're going to lose that, like, nasty taste in your mouth from dealing with the promoters. Then you're on the right track for sure.
Absolutely. So when you're setting these interviews up, the legends, obviously there's a formula there. You've hit the method of how you're going to approach them, how you're going to nail it down.
Yeah.
The rising stars. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you could just throw a dart and hit a wrestler. That's really the way the internet's kind of set up nowadays. Where do you get your rising stars? Do you have a talent pool? Are you going in certain directions? Do you have a connection for that? What's the thought process behind who you get and who you want to put them with?
Absolutely, yeah. So for when I first did my episode with my very first episode with Buff Bagwell and a wrestler named Corey Cooper. Yeah. He was I actually know him from my first college that I went to. So I only figured, hey, I know this guy in person. First episode, don't know how it's going to go. Would rather do it with somebody who I know. You know what I mean? And of course I had in my mind, like, this is going to be great for him and, great for Buff. Both going to be a cool concept. And, you could tell, like, if I, for example, like I'm going to release an episode this Thursday from whenever this is being filmed, the 20th. And it's with ODB and a wrestler out of Chicago named Sky Blue. And it's such a great episode. Like, as a fan, I love it. Like, not even, I'm not trying to toot my own horn here. Like, from there, it's great listening to them talk to each other. And I think that's where the concept really hits home, is when the wrestler and the rising star really get to duke it out between each other. Yeah. And so with that first episode, I remember the time where I thought, like, okay, maybe, you know, this will go good, this will go bad, whatever. And I saw Buff giving Corey advice, and like, I could see it because I know myself, like, I'll look at the camera and I could see on my face when I was like, oh, like, I was very happy. I'm like, this is working, you know? So that worked out well. So that was with Corey. And then from there on, what I did was, like you kind of said, and, you know, not ashamed to say, I kind of just went randomly, you know, on Instagram, and I was like looking for independent wrestlers. I wanted to go to a different state. Like, I like to get them from all over the place, if possible, because there are no limits with the Zoom, you know, the Zoom. Like, I'm 80 years old, but
we got the nowadays, we got the Zoom. Y'all back in the day had to call people up. You had to write a letter to book Jim Cornette. I can Zoom. God. No.
Yeah. But yeah, so I kind of, at first I chose like randomly. Now I'm ashamed to say I don't know who the second person, I know the second episode, but I don't know who the second one that I reached out to was. But I reached out to, like, I sent out just 10 emails. And of course, the great thing about the independent wrestlers is you send out 10 emails, you get 10 back. You know what I mean? You send out to the vets, not so much. So a lot of them responded, and that's kind of how I got my first, like, talent network. And from there, what I've done, which makes the process a little easier on me, especially when episodes are coming up so close to each other, is I kind of just, hey, you know, thanks so much for coming on the episode. Do you have a friend who may be interested too? A friend in wrestling. And that's what I've done from there. That's why a lot of the episodes, like, I uploaded one with Mike Swanson, Tony Cheney, and Big Dom, who's 911's son. And they all know each other pretty well from, like, the New Jersey wrestling scene, and probably Philadelphia too. And then the ones that are coming out now, it's a lot of wrestlers out of Chicago, one who's wrestling, I believe, in Minnesota right now. So they all knew each other as well. So they're grouped together. But that's how I went about it. Yeah. And I think it worked out pretty well. I think the coolest part is learning about all these smaller promotions that I knew nothing about, you know, before that. And now I'm learning about, you know, the rivalries. I always see advertisements that they post for them now. They're on YouTube, some of them. And that's a really, as a wrestling fan, that is awesome. You know what I mean? To know a wrestler like 5, 6, 7 states away, be like, oh yeah, I interviewed that person. Now they're making it big in Chicago or Minnesota or whatever. So
that's always the best, is getting to see somebody to start off and then going to see them do really, really cool things. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
There's somebody, Zicky Dice. I love him to death. I heard about him because one of my good friends, Lord Crew, and him were in a New Japan camp together. And he came back and was like, hey man, you got to see this guy with the magic gimmick. Zicky's gimmick used to be doing magic tricks. He would have the cards come out of his mouth, flowers appear, things like that. He still kind of does it, not so much. But then to see him go to NWA, win their television title, and now that guy's ascending above wrestling. Like, he's got a Twitch channel that goes every day of the week. He's building himself up into something. And to see somebody rise is one of the coolest feelings. Doing anything related with wrestling is getting to see somebody when they're not so big and getting to see them make those upward motions.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. You know, 10 years from now, I'd love to see where some of the people who I've interviewed are. You know, I don't want to, you know, say anything wrong. I think just only one person I've interviewed so far, though, has been on AEW Dark. And that was cool hearing about how that experience went. That was Mr. Grimm. And he's a lot of people. Actually, there was a documentary done on him, like a small documentary on YouTube that I found when I was doing research on it. But he's a great guy. And then, you know, like we said, 10 years from now, who knows, right?
Yeah. When you're pairing these guys up, is there a thought process of, okay, I'd love to have this type of legend and this type of rising star? Mm-hmm. Has there ever been a situation where you thought two were going to work together and then it had to change it? Or has there ever been any incompatibility?
So there's, let's see, I'll phrase this, because there's one episode that I really don't want to give away who the guest is, but it's definitely the biggest incompatibility out there, I'd say, on YouTube. Okay. It's really, but for obvious reasons, and you'll know it when I upload it. And I hate to leave it on like a cliffhanger, but that's just but I'll say both people really got their stuff out there, which was the great part about it. Yeah. The concept didn't really mesh well. And there's really none that I could speak to that I think I never was like, oh, like crap, that went horribly. You know what I mean? Right. But but putting them, there's definitely some that worked better than others for sure. And like I always joke about the fact that when I had Philly Mike Swanson on, it was in like my early stages of doing the show, and I knew he was like a hardcore guy, and then I got the Boogie Woogie Man, Jimmy Valiant, and I was like, all right, I said, let's pair them together, and couldn't be more different, right?
Right.
And like the 70s brawler and death match Philly Mike. And so they got together. I think that the concept worked. It was different, Boogie Woogie trails off when he wants to, but it worked though.
Right.
It was cool. So from that point on, I was like, okay, this contrast, maybe they don't have to be similar. Maybe the contrast works just fine. Maybe it could be drastically different or incredibly similar. And I think I've seen cases of that, like New Jack and Dom Truex both. I mean,
Right.
New Jack, reputation speaks for itself when it comes to hardcore, and Dom is the son of 911 ECW legend there. So that meshed really cool. I loved that episode. I remember afterwards saying to both of them, like, this was fantastic. Like, you guys got the, and if someone asked me before if New Jack was going to be the one that really like locked on to the, like out of everyone I've had, if New Jack was going to be that one that locked onto the concept, I don't know what I would have said, but he really did though. He did. He totally rocked it, and he's such a cool guy. He followed the page afterwards. He's a really good supporter. His book is fantastic. I hate to plug him, but I'd love to plug his book.
Please.
Memoirs of the Hardcore Extremist, New Jack. Definitely a good read if you're looking for a book. Probably butchered the name, but you'll find it. Look up New Jack book. Amazing book.
New Jack book. That's all you got to do. Just go look up New Jack's book. You'll find it. I'm sure if you go to his page, you'll find it.
There's a picture of him shirtless signing all of them, so you'll enjoy that. Yeah.
What a guy. When you're dealing with somebody like New Jack, you're dealing with, like, you've had Raven on.
Yeah.
These people who are more known for saying things off the cuff, saying things controversial. We talked especially about with you dealing with YouTube.
Right.
When you sit down, you're going to say, you know what, I'm going to have New Jack on. What are there? Do you take precautions? Do you have like a talk to him? Is there like an outline, or do you even just, I mean, it's New Jack, so are you just kind of like, it's New Jack, I can't do anything?
Yeah, I think with someone like specifically like New Jack, it's great, or even Raven, anybody, it's great to just let them be themselves, because that's how you're going to get the great content. That's how you're going to get the greatest stuff. So no, I really just let them do whatever they want. Like on that episode with New Jack and Dom, like Dom, I think beforehand was like, he, like when we were just sitting there, just he and I, before New Jack got there, he was like, I'm not going to be doing this on your show. And he was smoking, I think, his bong. And I was like, no, do it. Like, I'm sure New Jack would, like, why not? Totally. So that episode's like New Jack, talking about him reenacting the Rodney King beatings with Ricky Morton and the infamous O.J. Simpson promo. And then Dom's just over there, smoking away. So that, I'd consider that episode like a little R-rated compared to the rest, but it's great though. When it comes to that, all it takes is a little, lowering whatever they say. If New Jack's cursing a lot, just take it out a little bit, because that really does, I've learned, mess with the advertising. Mess with anything really. Like, it halts the progress in general. I think when YouTube sees that there's just a lot of profanity, a lot of inappropriate stuff. But that New Jack has, I think that might be one of the most successful like ones up there so far. So it's kind of funny how that works out, but totally let them be themselves. I would say I like to do that. Raven really grasped onto the concept. I felt like I was sitting in on one of his seminars. Like when he was in there, he was giving the guy advice on his gimmick. He was giving Tony Cini advice on how to evolve from what he was. It was really, really cool episode, but totally, I let them be themselves. That's how they got to where they are now, with that brash personality of just saying whatever. So why censor that?
And that's funny you bring up Tony Cini, because I think his gimmick is the delivery boy.
I think it was. He might have changed it now, but it was. I think he's La Capa Grande. I made of
La Capa Grande.
Well, it might not be La Capa Grande. It might be something else. But he's the boss, I believe now. Tony Cini. Yeah.
Okay.
In Italian.
I thought there was just like he's a big cop. He's La Capa Grande. He's the biggest officer in the force. He's the big guy. Oh no, I was gonna say, when you get somebody like the delivery boy Tony Cini, has there been a moment where anybody's questioned, where the legend has questioned who you were bringing on?
So that's interesting. Yeah. So I think when I go into characters that I've gotten on the show, the funniest one to me in terms of just like outright like wow, like that's who I'm getting, it was a Nacho Clown, a really talented performer. Like we talked about wrestling for so long. He's such a great guy. Like on the phone we talked about it, and he's a really talented performer. He does a couple different characters where he is, and I was like, all right, Nacho Clown. And he was actually, that was funny because I was supposed to have, who was coming up? Lanny Poffo was coming up, and somebody did not want to do it with Lanny Poffo. And I was like, okay, like I don't know what history you have with him, but that's fine. So I had to kind of scramble to get somebody quick. Like that was the only time that last minute kind of
Okay.
came into play. And what is it? That pressure,
Yeah.
So I scrambled and I found somebody. I did a little research and I found a promotion called Premier Pro Wrestling out of Chicago, and I was trying to think of who runs it. I forget, but anyway, I found a performer who does that, and he had his phone number listed. And I was like, this is the quickest way. And I looked at a few of his things. I was like, this guy, he could work. So, and he's the one who I actually ended up pairing with Hornswoggle and
Okay.
PK on our most recent episode. Really, really great guy, great speaker, and
great episode, by the way.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I think Hornswoggle, that was a good, I love when the concept is really grasped onto,
Yeah.
But yeah, so he couldn't do it. So he actually put me in touch with Sky Blue, who then got paired up with ODB on this upcoming episode, and she couldn't do it, obviously. So then so Nacho, he texted me. He's like, I heard you need someone to fill in. Can the Notch like step in? And I just started laughing. So I'm like, Nacho Clown, this is going to be fantastic. And I'll say, so yeah, long answer to that question. Well, a legend has never really said anything to the person they're getting teamed up with. And I thought it was kind of funny when Lanny first joined. I don't think it's in the actual episode, but Lanny's like, have I met you or something to Nacho? And Nacho's like, I think you'd remember me. Like I thought that was great. He's in like a clown wig and like,
right.
Anyway,
like, have I met you before? Yeah. The clown guy with Nacho in his name.
So far on my show, none of the legends have ever been like, oh God, like no. You know what I mean? They get there, they do whatever, and they have a good time. So I'm happy to say not yet.
Awesome. Well, hopefully never, because what you're doing right now, pairing these legends together with these rising stars, is fucking amazing. I love watching every episode of it.
I really appreciate that. Go on.
Oh, I was gonna say, so with that bringing so much together, because I do a concept where I take wrestling from a whatever standpoint.
Exactly.
I look at it from, I want to talk to you or whoever I'm talking to about what you're most excited about, what you're into, what you're working on. Whether it's, Zicky Dice talking about his Twitch channel, PCO talking about his weekly Instagram. That guy is awesome. You've got to talk to him sometime. PCO is such a good dude.
All right. I would definitely keep it in mind.
Even to you with doing your concept of legends and rising stars, it's the matter of pushing that passion forward. I think that's going to keep growing your audience and anyone's audience who really approaches it with that. Looking to the future, are you playing a top yourself game, or do you play like how long of a game are you playing with your concepts, who you're shooting for, where you're taking the show? How far out are you thinking and planning, knowing that you have such a tight concept?
Right. So I've definitely thought to the future when it comes to something like on a smaller scale, like how do I release the episodes and who, when, like I have a few people who are more involved with like the current happenings who I've had on who, you maybe wouldn't classify them as like legends yet, but definitely veterans in the business. Right now I have a few episodes pre-recorded, quite a few. So I like them to stay timely. So I've kind of stopped for the time being for the next few weeks. Cause if I mention something, I'd like it to come out relatively around the same time.
Yeah.
The end game though, when it comes to, the episodes I have now and then onward, I'd like to go as long as I can. I definitely would say I like to play a top myself game, like who I could get.
Right.
I don't want to insult anyone's stance on, their draw status or whatever, but my first one was Buff Bagwell. And then I mentioned earlier, I think I've said it a few places now, so I'll say it. I got Jake the Snake was another person who I haven't released yet, but that's going to be awesome. And I have a few more surprises definitely up my sleeve. That one that I'll say this, the one that I was talking about, that I mentioned that was kind of not too compatible to two people, I don't think there is an interview with that person yet. Former world champion. I haven't seen a conventional interview, I'll say, yet. One in America. So I'll leave it at that. But yeah, so that was interesting. But going forward, yeah, I like to think about that. But
yeah, I'm gonna be thinking about that one for a while.
But anyway, going forward, I'd love to just see how long I could take it. Like, I'm having a really good time. When I think about it too, it's kind of cool because, like, when you're a big fan, you don't expect to be interviewing. Like, that was probably one of the biggest struggles at first, was doing the interview. You can't mark out. You know what I mean? You feel the same thing, right?
It's the worst thing ever. Like, you want to talk to these guys and you want to feel like Chris Farley and those old, like, skits are like, remember that time when you put that dude through a table? That was so cool.
I know.
Dude, I watched that so many times. But you got to be like, okay, I can't just like talk to you about the same fucking move over and over again. But yeah, exactly. Like, you can't mark out with these guys.
Absolutely not. And yeah, you want to act as professional as possible. You want to keep the image of your show. You don't, because then, wrestling is such a tight knit community. The wrestlers themselves, like, you don't want them to go, no, don't do that shit. That guy's a mar. Like, you don't want to go, yeah. So it's from like a reputational standpoint, but also just from yourself. You want to keep your composure. So that was a big challenge at first for me, actually. But then when I actually got into the episode, like with Buff Bagwell, I remember, it went from like not wanting to mark out to just being like a little nervous, being like, all right, talk like you're the host, like say something.
Yeah.
Because they've been around the world, they have that reputation. But going forward, I'd like to just see how long I can, make this last, see where it goes, see how it grows. I'd love to develop like more, obviously, for wrestling community, the audience of the show. I'd love to give back. We do weekly giveaways. The guys have also been really cool with that, and the women ODB. They've given a lot of stuff for the giveaways, which is really, really nice of them to do. And I love to give back to my audience, so that's where I was going with that. But yeah, moving forward,
that's why you should watch Jonah instead of me, guys. That's why you should. He's gonna give you stuff. You're getting free shit. I'm just getting drunk. He's gonna be the one giving you guys stuff. Watch him. Don't listen to me.
Now imagine a combination. That's something.
I'll get drunk. You give stuff away. I'll just make fun of whoever gets it.
So yeah, but definitely top myself game. I'm excited to see where it goes.
Awesome. So moving forward, obviously, I would never ask you to show your hand from one content creator to another.
Yeah.
How far would you say your guest list or your dream list go? I know, at least from a podcaster standpoint, I have a dream roster. I have episodes I want to do, concept I want to knock off the list. How close, and actually I'll rephrase that. How close to in the beginning, if you would have made a dream list, to now, how close are those two concepts? Would you say that you're going
that's interesting.
where you approached, where you thought you were going to go, or are you exceeding that?
I would say that, let's see. No, I won't. I want to give there. You know what? I'll say I'll release one name. One name that was awesome to have on the show was Godfather. We filmed an episode with him. Sick episode. He was a great guy. Like, incredible. Oh my God, it's so cool to have him on. And he tells great stories, obviously, and with him so close to the whole Undertaker retiring, obviously it started us off for the summer or sometime around then, right? And now we're so deep in that we're getting stories of the Tales of the Dead Man, which was a few weeks ago. And who knows what they'll do next with it, right? They're milking that as hard as they can. The Undertaker's retirement or lack thereof, whatever it may be.
This retirement,
yeah.
I watched Shawn Michaels take a bump last night on Monday Night Raw.
Yeah.
So nobody's retired. I'm sorry. Nobody's gone. If Shawn Michaels takes an RKO, sorry if I spoiled Monday Night Raw. I'm not sorry. But yeah, no, nobody's retired. Sorry.
I have such mixed feelings of that as a wrestling fan, when they bring back the old stars, because you want to make them, you want to cultivate, and they admitted it recently, right? Like, they rely too much on their old stars. And I feel like a lot of, when you have, like, what is it? Somebody recently said this, I forget who, on one of I think it might've been Raven. When you go to like a show, you want them to play the hits, right? Like something like that. So,
right.
When you go to a wrestling event, it's amazing to see the talent they have on display. But it's such a cool experience if you're there and like Stone Cold comes out, you know, you hear that, or you know, something like that.
Absolutely.
So it's just, it's like mixed feelings, like a double-edged sword. But anyway, going back to that, Godfather, amazing to have on. That was somebody who I definitely had on that dream list, who I wanted to check off, just because I know that his stories go like leaps and bounds past a lot of guys. Like he's been through so many, so much important, you know, so much important times in the business, and just all of like what you hear, like BSK, you know what I mean? He's such a cool performer, such a cool image that he's kind of cultivated. So that was there. And I also wanted to see how he acted with the concept. I thought that was going to be pretty interesting. So that was checked off. My dream list is too big for, you know, like I don't see it coming to fruition anytime soon. But
my dream list is not going to work because half of them don't speak English. So unless somebody gets the great Muda, like a great translator, I'm
I love that. That's I'm calling that greatest line of this podcast. The great Muda needs a great translator for sure. Yeah. So if I had to pick one person to have on the show, there's actually two, and one I reached out to, and it was kind of just like not right now, but it was Mick Foley, number one. I think he'd be incredible with the concept and his story, like amazing. You know, I think he'd rock it. And Jeff Hardy, just from personal, like I want him on the show. Like I think he'd be amazing. Yeah. A cool story I have with Jeff Hardy is at this past WrestleMania, not this past one, the one before that, the actual WrestleMania. It's a shame, you know, but yeah, the real WrestleMania, we went, and it was the first time I was taking my girlfriend to, kind of turned her into like this wrestling, like my wrestling fan, you know, sidekick, but really, you know, not side, you know how it goes, but she, you know,
everyone's got to have a partner. I got a girlfriend
exactly
who got into it. Luckily mine jumped in. Mine's super in. My girlfriend is so into wrestling. It's wonderful.
I would say that at first it was more like, you know, like I've heard her say, you know, I watch it because you know, he watches it. Now it's kind of like she's got her shirt. Big fan of Thugonomics John Cena, which was awesome. Can you imagine that? She becomes a fan of Thugonomics John Cena and makes the appearance at that WrestleMania. That was sick.
Right.
But we went to that Mania since it was in MetLife. And we went at like, oh my God, 5 a.m. This was the earliest signing I think I've ever been to. It was a Jeff and Matt Hardy signing at the WrestleMania Super store in New Jersey at the stadium, like a day before Mania. And she did my face paint up just like him and everything, like really good, drew the face and everything. And it impressed Jeff so much that when he was like when they arrived, he like stopped, and I have the video and everything. And like, I have like me and like a little group of like 5 or 6 fans just surrounding me in like this circle, just like just eyes wide at Jeff. And he's like, there's a face somewhere in there. You know, he goes like this over the face, like there, you know, he's talking about like demons and how like, and then he just starts bowing down, and then he's like, come here. And we just hug it out. Like, it was such a cool experience. And they caught it on WWE, like the little documentary they did for WrestleMania. So like, that getting hugged by Jeff Hardy, coolest experience of my wrestling fan life. You know, it was incredible. And I owe that all to my girlfriend, just getting her into it. It helped with that a lot. I couldn't have done the face paint. Couldn't have. She's artistic in that way. So, but anyway, great experience there. And I need Jeff on the show. That's a dream right there.
Well,
may come to fruition.
We're going to make sure we help make that dream a reality. So if you listen to this episode,
I appreciate that.
Tag Jeff Hardy, just point him in the direction of Jonah's show. Whether you're watching this on YouTube, you're listening to an audio podcast of me, go to his page. What's the worst that can happen? We had a conversation at the beginning of this that sometimes I just got interviews because I decided to put my nuts on the table. The worst thing that they can do is say no. That's what was so great about having you on the show today, was talking about this, and the fact that the same way I feel is how you feel. The fact that if you reach out and you try these things, the worst that can happen is somebody can say no. But if you reach out and try these things, amazing things can happen. A stoner drunk dude can make a podcast like Gettin Worked with Mike. Someone who has their shit way more together than me, like Jonah, can make a show like Recap, Rewind, Relive. I'm sorry to say it wrong. It's Rewind Recap.
No, it's funny. It's gonna. I went like this. I looked up and I was like, "Did he say it right or wrong?" It just it gets.
I had to look behind you, and I looked down at my notebook. I was like, "I said that wrong," but This has been amazing. There's nothing I love more, than talking to somebody about wrestling, and then to have you on and to talk to somebody who comes kind of from the same cloth, but you're in a different style of it. It's almost like we're like, one's a painter, one's a sculptor. We're kind of working in the same medium, but we're kind of on different sides of the same coin. So
I love that.
this has been
I do.
awesome.
Yeah, no, it's been really cool. I appreciate you having me on. This is, like for the show, for Rewind Recap Relive, I love like getting like I don't think I'm ever going to go in that direction of, sitting down for an hour and like talking about wrestling, just me. Like everyone loves to get themselves out there, right? And get their shit in. But I like to kind of put my guests out there and like see what so this was really cool. This is a cool outlet to kind of talk about this and just, even whoever finds it interesting, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm glad. But I just loved getting it out there just to get the story, you know what I mean? And meeting you it's been great. So thank you, really.
No, thank you. And I want to have you back on. I'm looking forward to having more of these conversations. Definitely want to have Jonah back on again. So make sure you guys go follow him. Tell the people where they can find you.
Yeah, so you're going to find us everywhere at Rewind Recap Relive, as Mike put it out. Well, you guys actually can because he's putting on a podcast. But my background says Rewind Recap Relive. So yeah, Instagram, Facebook. We're not on Twitter. I know Mike is. A lot of followers, doing Twitter well. But we are not on Twitter. But yeah, and of course, YouTube. Check out all of our videos that we have up so far. And totally subscribe and enter the giveaways, weekly giveaways. So come on by, check it out. And yeah, thank you, Mike, for having me. And I would love to have you on as well. Definitely do a collaboration with that. So your listeners could definitely see you on our platform as well and see you in general.
Right. It's the first time.
Is that a face reveal?
We're gonna find out. Your YouTube followers or your YouTube views are gonna find out real fucking quick. If you take a deep dive, it's because of me.
Oh my God.
But this has been awesome. And of course, I'll come on anytime. Hopefully you'll be back on here anytime. I look forward to having you and speaking to you more. So make sure you guys go follow this. Make sure you go check Jonah out. Check out his show. Follow him on YouTube. Subscribe, leave a review. Give some support to those out there supporting wrestling, whether it's the legends, whether it's the rising stars, whether it's somebody giving away free shit on YouTube. It's all supporting wrestling. If we all love it and we all support it, it can only get better.
Exactly.
Maybe we won't get things like we got this year. Maybe we won't get Retribution as a storyline because they don't know what to do in WWE. Maybe they'll start writing. Maybe they'll start creating because he's creating. I'm creating.
I appreciate that, Mike. Yes, you are. Yeah, you guys go creating. Anybody out there, I'm going to speak for Mike here, but I'm sure he's fine with it. Anyone out there who is, a creator, a wrestling page just starting up or seasoned, reach out, please, to either of us. You know what I mean? I'd love to collaborate.
Absolutely.
Big wrestling collaboration in the future for sure. So if you guys are out there, reach out.
Do it. There's a new generation. We're part of it. If you're going to be part of it, jump in. The water is fucking amazing. Yeah, follow Jonah. Follow me. This has been awesome, man.
Really has. Thank you again. Is that it? Are we done seeing everybody out?
I guess we're done now. See you guys.